Hi all. How exciting to be here and how amazing of you to come, who decided to come because it's beautiful outside. And also thank you for all those who watch this in the replay. Let me start with a short introduction. I'm Karen. I'm a portrait artist and I made a special portrait project I want to talk about today and more. So I identify as human. Why? Because in the end, that's what we all are, despite gender, sexual preferences, color of our skin, religious preferences, and cultural background. And I will explain later why I just recently started to say that I identify as human for another reason. But to be a bit more specific, I am born with female genitals, identify as female, although I sometimes can also feel differently, and I love women. I came out late because my father was way behind in his acceptance of anything else but binary, meaning women, of a woman and a man is sex and normal because it is what God gave us to reproduce our sort. In society, we have a choice between two boxes. If you do not fit them, you're either out, living on the outskirts of humanity. We have brilliant people like Dr. Phil Opoku-Jima, and before that, Marsha P. Johnson and Audre Lorde and Angela Davis, who fought for LGBTQI+ and civil rights. And don't let me forget Nate, who is part of this project and who fights for LGBTQI+ community. And so I will share something so you can have an idea. Here you see Nate, but this is Phil, painting I made before. It's a study I made before I started her oil painting. This is Audre Lorde, librarian, writer, author, and civil rights activist. Marsha P. Johnson, gender of non-conformative, fighter for the human rights and LGBTQI+ in New York. Angela Davis, professor emeritus philosophy, writer, civil rights activist. Came out late also, by the way, and Nate. So, does anyone know what these people have in common? Put that in the chat. Because you're right, they're all black or mixed race. And that's exactly that. And what most people do not know is that it were black and brown people from the LGBTQI+ community and transgender and gender non-conformative who started to stand up and fight for the rights of all. And I mean all, as all colors available and LGBTQI+. Yet, if you watched The Life and Death of Marsha P. Johnson, it were the mainstream white LGBTQI+ people who yelled and screamed at them. Pure racism. Yet Marsha fought for everyone. So how and why did I start this project, Black Queer Role Models, Painting for Unity? In 2018, 19, something like there, I think it was 19. Well, I started in 18, but I painted in 19. I was painting the portrait of Phil, and she told me her story, which I made into an art book. The most shocking to me was that it was not even the fact that she loved women more than men, but that she was told as a young kid that it was better to hide because the racist party here with the bald heads, body warmers and Dr. Martens did not like her sword. Can you imagine the impact? Can you imagine what she, as a young girl, must have felt? You are a human being. You live your life, you play with your friends, who is, by the way, white, and suddenly you get told you're different and that's not liked. She also told me that her mother had difficulties understanding and accepting that she loved women more than men, later when she dared to come out. The stories she told me about acceptance as black lesbian were shocking, and apparently within the mainstream pride, Black people who also wanted to be visible were not accepted and rudely tossed out when they asked for more visibility. Hence UK Black Pride. Because I came out late, and also because I'm not very much a community person, I was oblivious about that. In the Netherlands, it is accepted more than in many other countries. So for me, her stories made my jaw drop. And that was the moment for me to start this project, and for obvious reasons, Black queer role models and not queer role models in general. So I painted portraits, and at first with their true skin color, but then it dawned on me that the focus would still be on the skin color. So in that moment, I painted several portraits with the LGBTQI+ inclusive colors. And I know we all have our own flag, but it is sheer impossible to paint a portrait of every identity under the sun. That would take up years and more, and the book as thick as the ever-growing encyclopedia. I don't know if that was here in the UK too, but my gran once bought the encyclopedia, 10 parts, and became a member to receive every year a new edition, to the 10 she already had. She had not one shelf, but she had a whole bookshelf filled with the encyclopedia and the yearly editions. Can you imagine how thick the book would be if I painted all portraits of every single identity and sexual preference? More and more people come out and identify as the ever-growing LGBTQIA+ string of letters from the alphabet. Why do you think? And what do you think? That tells you about humans. Why in the world do we all need to come out in the first place? Heterosexuals don't have to, so why do we? Only because we do not fit in their two boxes, right? Only because someone set a standard of what normal means. Now back to my project. I decided to paint 10 portraits, and Annika Chambers wrote a micropoem next to each one. At the back you can read a very short bio, and there is a link to a lesson brief. Why? Because I not only believe, but know that we need to teach children, teenagers, young adults, and even adults as parents, or those who vehemently are against teaching about LGBTQ in schools. Why Black? Because they often fight a double or even triple fight. Besides all the racism, prejudices and biases, children, teenagers and young adults need their role models, need the people they can relate to or identify with. And on top of that, those who come from families who condemn LGBTQI+ and bully have to learn even more. They already need to be reprogrammed. Their brains are already wired towards discrimination, and that is dangerous. And that has already led to many suicides on teenagers who proudly came out, but couldn't cope with the bullying. So I decided to make this into a book with a lesson plan to spread wildly over the world in schools, with organizations and institutions, because teaching is important and it has to start at the basics, the roots. I really knew I was on the right path with this project, and the government had to decide if teaching about LGBTQI+ would be good in schools, primary and secondary. In my Facebook, of all places, a fellow artist came with the most ridiculous and confusing messages in my timeline. And I hate it when people deliberately spread lies to back their own fear of the unknown. So he wrote that he went to Westminster, again, so it wasn't for the first time, to pray to God to not let these insane practices come into schools. Because, he wrote, I do not want my kids to learn from their teacher how either two men or two women have sex. Of course, I couldn't shut up. I've replied that his perception was totally wrong, that it was not about sex, but the fact that people can simply love each other as two women, two men, trans straight, trans gay, etc., etc. So the main fact he gave was sex education, and his reply was that he asked his kids. And both did not want to know how people from LGBTQI+ had sex. And I replied he coerced his children with rhetoric questions. I don't think he knew what rhetoric was anyway. I pushed through and I told him that he could pray his off, but that God would not accept it as God is all inclusive. And on top of that, I wrote him that Jesus more likely was also gay. I think he fainted in his timeline. His reaction was that he would pray to God to forgive me. But of course, I was not yet ready with him, and I let him know that that was not necessary because there was nothing to forgive. As I said before, God is all inclusive and only love. But I would ask my God to forgive him for his short-sightedness and fixed mindset. And by the way, I am spiritual and not religious in any way, not to offend those who are. But then and there, I knew how important it is to teach. So recently, I noticed a man shouting he was not against gay people in trans. Again, a reason why it's important to teach. But he was also bringing it into the sex act. And he talked about his worldview that he would teach his kid. Well, he has no worldview. He has a view that is very egocentric, meaning only from his own limited standpoint. A worldview is a view that accepts everyone, and a universal view is where you know we are all one. Teaching is definitely needed. So, how does art come into this equation? Art is a catalyst and a beautiful vehicle to discuss topics that people find difficult. And by showing portraits and reading a short bio of the people, a discussion can follow if those people look differently, are not capable or functioning in society, and the question how they look at the portraits and have colors other than their own skin color, how it makes them feel. Let them paint each other and what the word unity means. The poems can lead to reading them and finding out more about the people painted and to a session where they write their own poems. As you see multiple options to learn about unity, as we are all human, in a way that does not cause stress, strange and aggressive behavior. Most importantly, steering away from the thought that teaching about LGBTQI+ is teaching how we have sex. It is my knowing and belief that art unites. When a group works on a project to paint each other and the other group makes a poem about the portraits, it's fun, stressless, and gives opportunities to talk, to grow acceptance. But that's not all. As I said in the beginning, I started to say that I identify as human instead of saying whether I am a female, lesbian, or whatever. Recent research has found that the choices we have of only 2 boxes, female and male, is ridiculously narrow-minded. There are more than 150 million born intersex, and many are intersex without even knowing it. The variations are numerous, and we are taught that there are only XX, XY chromosomes, that we have 22 divided over what we get from our mother and our father. Wrong. It is way more complex and there are way more variations possible. And you can't live, for instance, without an X chromosome. The body will not develop. So assigning XX to female and XY to male, knowing that only 4% of the genes on an X chromosome have something to do with our sex, makes the word sex chromosome already outrageous. But the consequences of that word are huge. Females can have XY and many more combinations. Now, when it comes to transgender, you can, as you know yourself, feel a woman or man inside and dress as such on the outside with all the nasty responses from the outsiders. Writer J.K. Rowling, the woman of the word should know better. She should know how words can destroy people. And instead of flapping her gums, she better had done some research about what a woman is. Because Dr. Carissa Sambomatsu, a renowned transgender scientist, has a fabulous TED Talk where she explains that apart from the wide variety of chromosomes we can have, the brain is a mosaic of patterns that contain information that make you feel male or female. DNA changes whilst the embryo is in development, and it's epigenetics that change the DNA. At the end of its development, it makes a choice, either A or B. So you feel female inside, but you have the genitals of a man and vice versa. It's biology and normal. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you at all. There's something very wrong with a narrow-minded society who, based on religion, and I'm sorry, but it's true, when people interpret a book, decided that the only possibility is that you are either a male or a female. Wrong. We are a gamut of a lot of what they coined sex chromosomes and a brain that has a tapestry of patches that are male and female. Also, both different stages of development. That is why I identify as human. That is why many teenagers feel they are fluid. And even when heterosexual, a woman can be very masculine and still be a female on the outside and love a man. It is all normal and biology identifiable. We are all non-binary. So on top of that, this whole chromosome story plays a role in the color of the skin. Color of the skin is genetically defined, and since the beginning of humankind, people in Africa can be very pale to deep black and everything in between. So the implications are huge and have led to enormous social anxiety and racism, and is completely stupid. So back to the art part. Ooh, sorry. Can you see? Can you see? Can you see how teaching this material through a form of art makes it more acceptable and better chewable? In academia, because I'm also an academic, different faculties from different types of studies often come together. That never was the case, but you see this more and more lately, to bring their input, to multiply the knowledge and insights to come to often different conclusions. And this is perfect to use this book in art class, English literature class, biology class, Black history, etc. It steers away from the act of sex and brings it toward acceptance of Black queer role models, unity, and learning about the human being in multiple ways, of which the biological, to understand that the letters of LGBTQI+, and the plus says it all, will only grow. And the need to change our perceptions of the human being in general, LGBTQI+ in particular. We are all the same. We are all human beings. And it is about time we do not have to come out of a closet or explain who we are and have to say, I identify as, but can say simply, hi, I'm Karen. Thank you all. Thank you. I will send a link to Nate, and yeah, you can also watch this on my YouTube because I will place it there. Thank you all. And thanks, Nate, for inviting me to this. Thank you. Bye.